The social housing anti-racism pledge, absolutely love that. We work with a number of construction companies and the inequality there is absolutely shocking, has been for decades, and that's something that we want to be promoting throughout the construction industry.
I think they're going to go back to their own organisations and say, what can I do? The takeaway for me is their commitment is strengthened and they're looking at taking positive action. And I know from conversations that are happening, somebody's going to do something about that nationally.
There's something around making sure that that my team are doing that trauma-informed training, because I know that it is training that's offered within Bristol, but it isn't something that I've got my staff dealing with, and I think we need to do that, thinking about the fact that we're dealing with more and more vulnerable residents and residents for whom that are accessing housing from various backgrounds and who have experienced lots of trauma.
It's great to see that the South West are so far ahead in their thinking and ambitions with regards to anti-racism within the housing and part of the sector that looks after refugees and asylum seekers. And that totally aligns with my presidential campaign, which is about challenging the sector about the lack of diversity in leadership teams, the lack of diversity in the boardroom, and also how we present ourselves as positively anti-racist organisations.
The one thing I really like to take away today is nothing can be done on your own. So I think partnership working and all of us getting together to make difference is really critical. So we will be following up with some meetings, especially making some of the pledges that have happened today happen. So partnership working together, for me, that's the one thing to take away today.
I didn't really know what to expect. I knew it was about race and migration and housing. And I was asked to do a piece on the SHARP, which is the Social Housing Anti-Racism Pledge, which is very much about being active in fighting racism. We've seen kind of like post-George Floyd that there's been this kind of like this value and ethical reset amongst society where, I think people realise the writing's on the wall that things have to change, and I think the next generation has an expectation or they're going to change as well. So, for those of us who are in positions, we need to start making that change now.
Personally, I think it's about actually having those honest conversations, taking the time out to actually sit down and not sit in a bubble.
It's not about equalities, it's about anti-racism. It's quite different, I think, and therefore it's not okay just to have a strategy on a shelf. It's about how you engage with all your colleagues, your board, everybody, to say, what does this mean? Actually, what do we have to do differently about that?
Reading the history of the contribution that Guy has made, not just to housing, but to his community and to race equality, then the answer was yes straight away. It was actually a real honour and a privilege to meet him in person today and hand over the award. We all as a society dropped the ball a bit on race equalities. There's a new impetus. Guy is someone who stands as an inspiration really to a new generation of housing leaders coming forward and black housing leaders.
One of the useful things is we could all go off and do our own thing, but by coming together collectively today, we can also think about how we support each other. Different organisations have different strengths and are in different places on the journey. So today is a real great opportunity for us to reflect on not just what we can do ourselves, but what we can do collectively, because some of the things that need doing require collective action rather than just individual associations ploughing their own furrow.
We ran today's conference because we actually ran another conference about 3 years ago looking at race and housing, and none of the chief execs or leaders from our housing providers attended except for one, which I think was Fuad, who obviously has been with us throughout on this journey. What I was trying to get across today, and I think so are a number of other people, is the reality of the impact of racism and hate crime and discrimination on people, the trauma. And we've heard people speak today, and when they've spoken from their hearts, and they've spoken about trauma, they've spoken about terrible impacts from these racial inequalities. And that's why, for me, I spoke a lot about the need for housing associations and providers to, first of all, get in touch with the reality of what we're talking about, people that have been murdered and the impact on their families, people whose lives have been completely ruined and turned around, all the lack of when you don't get representation, then your organisation is actually failing to meet very, very critical needs of the communities you're serving.
Housing organisations have to put people at the heart of what they do. I said today about making it around homes, not houses. When you mention the word home, you suddenly think of the people. Change your choices. Be clear about what you see. You don't walk into a boardroom and see other people that look like you and not notice. You may keep quiet about it, but you know there's something wrong there. So just go back to the basics. Go back to just treating people well. That's what makes good civil society.